Hello again and welcome to Astronomy Daily. It's the 17th of February 2025.
Astronomy Daily, the podcast, with your host, Steve Dunkley.
Oh yes, we're back again. This is Steve Dunkley, your host, your only human host on Astronomy Daily. Hallie and I are back with some more stories from the Astronomy Daily newsletter, and we better get on with it. Welcome back, Hallie. Isn't that right? You've got some stories from the newsletter for us.
Too right, Steve.
Righto, tell us all about it.
I know you love robot stories, so I found a fun one that has asteroids and, as an added bonus, robots.
Oh, now you've got my attention.
That's a double whammy for you, isn't it?
Oh yes, you hit the bullseye. Rocks and robots. That ticks all the boxes.
I have another about lunar missions, Blue Ghost 1 and Resilience.
Oh, I like lunar missions as well, but no robots?
Not in that one.
Oh.
Sorry.
And for something completely different, I'll be sharing a story that discusses recent changes to the official history on a website of one particular scientist. And this as well, it's alarmed the astronomy community, so more on that later.
That sounds interesting.
Yes, I know politics can get a bit dry, but when it looks like they are rewriting history, well, you've got to question that, don't you? So stick around for that one. And of course, we're going to be following the continuing saga of our friends, the NASA astronauts, Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore.
Okay.
And this is a bone of contention because lots of people online continuing to say that they are stranded. Well, they don't think so.
We should jump right in.
Righto, Hallie, hit that start button.
Here we go. A spring-loaded robot could explore the asteroid belt almost indefinitely. The asteroid belt beckons. It contains enough resources for humans to expand into the entire rest of the solar system and has no biosphere to speak of. Essentially, it is a giant mine just waiting to be exploited. So, a student team from the University of Texas at Austin has devised a plan to exploit it as part of the Revolutionary Aerospace System Concepts Academic Linkage, or RASCL, a competition sponsored by NASA to encourage undergraduate and graduate students to develop innovative ideas to solve some of space exploration's challenges. UT Austin's submission to the competition last year, known as the Autonomous Exploration Through Extraterrestrial Regions, known as the Aether project, certainly fits that bill. Aether was submitted to the AI-powered self-replicating probe subsection of RASCAL 2024, which solicited ideas that would advance John von Neumann's idea of a self-replicating space probe. Aether addresses those challenges in two distinct ways. First, it combines a spring-loaded landing system and a metal-burning rocket engine to hop between different asteroids in the belt. To fuel its rocket, it uses a system to harvest water and metal, specifically aluminium, from the surface of the asteroid it's currently on, splits it into its components, and then dumps them into a fuel tank that can be used to power its next trip to a different asteroid. All of this is powered by a kilowatt reactor using Stirling Technolo Y, crusty, nuclear reactor that has been undergoing NASA and DOE testing for over a decade. The springs in Aether's legs have a twofold purpose. First, they allow for a soft landing on the surface of the gravitationally weak asteroid and can transfer some of the energy created by that landing into stored energy, which can be used to launch the system from its landing place later. It also has a set of wheels to navigate around the asteroid's surface. When it's time to jump off again, it replants its legs and springs back into space, with a little help from its rocket engine. The rocket engine designed as part of Aether can burn metal, such as aluminium, that the craft harvests from the asteroid to use as fuel. It is the primary system designed to take the craft from asteroid to asteroid, and it is meant to be a high delta-V option for doing so quickly. Aether also tries to mimic a von Neumann probe by using a machine learning algorithm to improve its resource harvesting efforts. It would take data from various sensors, including synthetic aperture radar and a spectrometer, and estimate where the best spot would be to land to refuel. While collecting that additional fuel material, it would communicate back with Earth via a high-speed optical communication link, allowing an Earth-based server to update the machine learning parameters and improve the algorithm's outcome for the next hop. The original mission design for Aether has it stopping at two specific asteroids before moving on to as yet unnamed ones. The first, which is probably no surprise, is Psyche, the big metallic asteroid that is about to be visited by its own dedicated probe. Data from that probe will help inform the first iteration of Aether's learning algorithm, and the input the sensors provide from its visit will update it before its next step, Themis. That asteroid, though smaller, is expected to contain a large amount of water ice, which is a necessary component for Aether's rocket engines.
Astronomy Daily,
the podcast.
And now the continuing saga of our friends on the ISS. Boeing Starliner astronauts are in the final stretch of their unexpectedly long stint in Earth orbit. They are setting the record straight with all of these stranded astronauts talk. NASA's Suni, Williams and Butch Wilmore launched to the International Space Station last June on the first crewed test of the Boeing's Starliner spacecraft. The duo expected their orbital stay to last only 10 days, but Starliner experienced thruster malfunctions during its approach to and docking maneuvers. This led to an extensive investigation by NASA and Boeing back on the ground, while the space agency decided how to proceed. Ultimately, Starliner returned to Earth uncrewed, and after some astronaut assignment shuffling, Wilmore and Williams were added to the downward leg of SpaceX's Crew 9 mission, which arrived at the ISS in late September. Absorbing Williams and Wilmore into the Crew 9 meant extending their time in space through the arrival of Crew 10 and at the end of Crew 9's 6-month rotation. Since then, headlines lamenting the woes of the so-called stranded astronauts have ebbed in and out of the media cycles. All the while, Williams and Wilmore have continued performing their regular duties aboard the ISS, including Williams breaking the record for the most cumulative spacewalking time by a woman. The pair's situation gained even more attention recently after President Donald Trump blamed the Biden administration for virtually abandoning the two astronauts and publicly calling SpaceX CEO and close Trump advisor Elon Musk to come to the rescue. Sorry, I nearly drifted off to sleep there. I think there might be some sort of catatonic trigger when I read paragraphs like that. Anyway, back to the story. In December, NASA announced a delay to the launch of Crew 10 to no earlier than late March due to the need to complete work on the new Dragon spacecraft being built for the mission. This delay further pushed back the return of Williams and Wilmore, who will fly home with the two astronauts who launched on the Crew 9 Dragon, NASA's Nick Hague and cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov. More delays in the manufacture of Crew 10's new Dragon have now prompted NASA to swap that mission spacecraft for one that can be made ready sooner. The announcement came 2 weeks after the social media exchange between President Trump and Musk, who echoed the president's misleading stranded astronauts rhetoric, and Williams and Wilmore hope that rhetoric will change. In a recent conversation with CNN's Anderson Cooper, the two explained that sometimes the mission extensions, even ones that push a stay from 10 days to 10 months, are just part of the job. We come prepared, we come committed, and that's what your human space flight program is. It prepares for any and all contingencies that we can conceive of, and we prepare for those, Wilmore told Cooper. We don't feel abandoned, we don't feel stuck, and we certainly don't feel stranded. In fact, Wilmore pointed out all the astronauts aboard ISS are capable of returning to Earth immediately in the event of an emergency. We never expect to come back just special for us or anyone, unless it was a medical issue or something really, really out of the normal circumstances, he said. Help us change the rhetoric, Wilmore asked Cooper. Let us change it to prepared and committed. Both astronauts have lived aboard the ISS for extended periods on previous missions, and both say that they're enjoying their time in space on this one. It's just amazing how when you come across the hatch after you've been there, it's like, oh my gosh, I remember what this is all like. I remember feeling what it's like floating, and I think both of us adapted really quickly, Williams said during a CNN interview. She also said that the end of their current spaceflight will be an emotional one. I think both of us will be a little sad when that feeling of space sort of leaves us. NASA is currently targeting no earlier than March 12 for the launch of the Crew 10 mission, which will fly the Crew Dragon capsule Endurance rather than SpaceX's New Dragon. A typical crew overlap aboard the space station lasts about a week, so Wilmore said he expects Crew 9 to depart Earth around March 19. Thank you for joining us for this Monday edition of Astronomy Daily, where we offer just a few stories from the now famous Astronomy Daily newsletter, which you can receive in your email every day, just like Hallie and I do. And to do that, just visit our URL at astronomydaily.io and place your email address in the slot provided. Just like that, you'll be receiving all the latest news about science, space science and astronomy from around the world as it's happening. And not only that, you can interact with us by visiting at Astro Daily Pod on X or at our new Facebook page, which is, of course, Astronomy Daily on Facebook. See you there.
Astronomy Daily with Steve and Hallie. Space, space science, and astronomy.
One commercial lunar lander has entered orbit around the moon while another, launched at the same time, has performed a lunar flyby to set up a later return. Firefly Aerospace confirmed on February 13 that its Blue Ghost 1 lander entered orbit around the moon, performing a 4-minute, 15-second burn of its reaction control system thrusters starting at 8:51 p.m. Eastern. The company did not disclose specifics about the orbit, but amateur trackers, monitoring its radio signals, estimated that the spacecraft is in an orbit between 150 and 5,673 kilometers above the moon. Firefly said the lander will perform additional maneuvers to move into a circular orbit to prepare for its landing attempt. That landing is scheduled for 3:45 a.m. Eastern, March 2nd, the company and NASA announced February 14th. Blue Ghost 1 is carrying 10 NASA payloads through the agency's Commercial Lunar Payload Services program intended to operate at the landing site near Mare Crisium through the end of the lunar day and several hours after sunset. Blue Ghost 1 launched on January 15 on a Falcon 9, sharing the launch with the Resilience lunar lander from Japanese company iSpace. Resilience, the company's second lander mission, performed a lunar flyby on February 14, passing about 8,400 kilometers from the lunar surface at 5:43 p.m. Eastern. Resilience is following a low-energy trajectory to the moon, one that will take it as far as 1.1 million kilometers from Earth before returning in early May to perform a lunar orbit insertion burn. That will be followed by a landing attempt in the Mare Frigoris region of the moon, although iSpace has not disclosed a planned landing date. Takeshi Hakamada, founder and chief executive of iSpace, said in a statement, "I feel very confident about the Resilience lander, which has steadily achieved milestones and is on track for success, and our employees who have made meticulous preparations for this impressive flyby of the moon." Both Firefly Aerospace and iSpace have outlined milestones and success criteria for their lander mission. For Firefly, achieving lunar orbital insertion was the 10th of 17 milestones from launch to operations of the lander after sunset on the lunar surface. The lunar flyby by Resilience was the 5th of 10 milestones for iSpace, from pre-launch preparations to establishing a steady system state after landing. Blue Ghost 1 could end up operating on the lunar surface at the same time as another commercial lander. Intuitive Machines is preparing for a February 26 launch of its IM-2 lunar lander mission at the beginning of a window that runs for 4 days. IM-2, like the company's IM-1 lander mission a year ago, is taking a more direct route to the moon. Steve Altemus, chief executive of Intuitive Machines, told CNBC on February 7 that a launch any day in the window would set up a landing in the Mons Mouton region near the south pole of the moon on March 6.
Roger that, Control. We're listening to Astronomy Daily, the podcast.
Scientists are alarmed as Rubin Observatory changes the biography of astronomer Vera Rubin amid the President of the United States push to end DEI efforts. Sharmila Kuth-Anur reported on Space.com on February 12 that astronomers are expressing disappointment and alarm as the federally funded Rubin Observatory altered the biography of renowned astronomer Vera Rubin, for whom the facility is named on its website. The amended version curtails her legacy of championing women in science and removes all mentions of the observatory's efforts to reduce barriers for women and other historically underrepresented groups in the field. The idea that they can somehow obliterate these sources is dead wrong. Scientists in general and astronomers in particular are not going to take these threats lying down, astronomer John Barentine told Space.com. He goes on to say, no executive order, no political edict is going to undermine or end our efforts to make the scientific workforce look more like our people. If anything, it's giving us more encouragement to continue to do this work because it is the morally, philosophically and politically right thing to do. The edits, first reported by ProPublica on January 30, came as federal agencies across the government scrambled to revamp their websites in order to comply with the US executive order issued by the President Donald Trump, which ends funding for diversity, equity and inclusion efforts and removes all mentions of them from public-facing websites. On January 27, it was reported in ProPublica that a portion of Rubin's bio titled "She Advocated for Women in Science" was removed entirely before being republished later that day in a diluted form. As of Tuesday, February 11, the altered bio still excluded a paragraph that originally read, "Science is still a male-dominated field, but Rubin Observatory, which is located in northern Chile, is working to increase participation from women and other people who have historically been excluded from science. Rubin Observatory welcomes everyone who wants to contribute to science and take steps to lower or eliminate barriers that exclude those with less privilege." One sentence in the final paragraph, which originally read, "Vera Rubin offers an excellent example of what can happen when more minds participate in science," was changed to replace the word more with many, altering the meaning from emphasizing the need for diverse perspectives to simply highlighting a high number of people, which changes and waters down the meaning of the statement considerably. This is the story of what happened in her life, Yvette Sendez, a radio astronomer at the University of Oregon, told Space.com. She was a huge champion for women in science, in particular because she faced things that were discriminatory for women. Diminishing those stories is pretty disturbing, frankly, she says. Other pages on the observatory's website, including the jobs and staff bio pages, have also been modified to erase mentions of diversity and inclusion efforts. The observatory, its funder the National Science Foundation, and the White House did not respond to requests for comment on February 3. Beyond her scientific achievements, Rubin also paved the way for women in science. Perhaps most notably in 1964, she battled to gain access to observe at the famed Paloma Observatory in California, becoming the first woman officially allowed to use its telescopes. Colleagues recall that when Rubin noticed the only restroom at the observatory was labelled men, she cut out a tiny paper skirt and taped it to the image of a man on the door. She turned around and said, "Now you have a ladies' room," and then she got to work. That was Vera Rubin, reads a 2021 statement from a former Carnegie Science president, Eric Isaacs. Throughout her career, she championed women in the field. As one example, she frequently would see lists of speakers at conferences. Former colleague Netta Bashol of Princeton University told Astronomy.com, and if there were few or no women speakers, she would contact the organisers and tell them they've got a problem and they need to fix it. But what if she hadn't been that fierce? What if she hadn't been the personality that we all have come to know? The unstoppable warrior, Isaac said in the Carnegie Science Statement. And here's the question that really haunts me, which is, how many Vera Rubins have we lost to these kinds of obstacles? As similar barriers are threatened to resurface due to the Trump administration's ongoing efforts to erase initiatives aimed at improving diversity in science, the astronomy community seems to be maintaining steadfast in its refusal to reverse decades of progress. Astronomy is not going to let Vera's contributions be forgotten, said Barentine. Various groups are actively working to use tools to archive content that has already been removed, as well as content that could potentially be erased from federal websites. The idea that they can somehow obliterate these sources is dead wrong. Scientists in general and astronomers in particular are not going to take these threats lying down, he said. But we have a long road ahead, and I expect there will be times when that road will be very difficult to walk. He declined to disclose the specifics of these efforts, but noted that the forces aligned against this should be aware that it's happening and they won't be able to stop it. Even at NASA, the offices associated with DEI initiatives were shut down during Trump's first days in office. A recently instated high-profile program called Here to Observe, or H2O, which paired undergraduate students from underrepresented groups with scientists running NASA missions, was recently grounded. The media outlet 404, an independent journalist-founded news website, reported that NASA employees were told to drop everything and scrub mentions of a list of words from public-facing sites, including Indigenous people, equity, accessibility, environmental justice, as well as anything specifically targeting women, and in brackets, women in leadership, etc. NASA has since removed inclusion as one of its core values. The flurry of changes triggered by the directive has led to the erasure of articles featuring NASA astronomers and underrepresented communities that the agency published in years past, like this one. Now, these pages sometimes display launch schedules of past SpaceX launches instead of the original prose. The original titles appear to remain. Agency employees have also been instructed to remove their pronouns from all work communications and instead follow the pre-designed signature block adopted by agency, NPR reported. Astrobiologist Michaela Basilova, who served as the director of High Seas Space Research Station in Hawaii, told Space.com that her efforts to encourage more women, people of colour and LGBTQ+ scientists to join her simulated missions to the Moon and Mars resulted in more applicants from these communities. Representation matters. Some of them told me that they only applied because they saw that others like them were successful in this sector too, she said during those simulated missions. The more diverse a crew was, the more successful a mission ended up being. The team got along better, was able to problem solve more efficiently, and they were more productive with their research projects. The impact of ongoing changes, which have prompted many talented and experienced people to leave the space agency, quote, will likely be long-term and they could cause many interesting projects not to get pursued or finished, she said. On May 17, 1996, nearly 50 years after her own graduation in 1948, Rubin addressed the graduating class at the University of California, Berkeley, saying, "I hope that you will fight injustice and discrimination in all its guises. I hope you will value diversity among your friends, among your colleagues, and, unlike some of your regents, among the student body population." She says, "I hope that when you are in charge, you will do better than my generation has."
Thanks for hanging out with us for this episode.
Yes, and don't forget there's more every day with Hallie's cousin Anna.
She won't let you down.
No, she won't.
She's way more hardworking than my favorite human.
Oi, Hallie, I resemble that comment.
You sure do, funny man. So watch it or Anna will want your job next.
There's no risk there. I know she can't work the coffee machine, Hallie.
It's so old school.
Hey, Hallie, how did the AI change the coffee filter?
I give up.
It didn't.
Oh great, those old school appliances again.
I know. And on that note...
See you all next week. Maybe for a nice English muffin and a cappuccino perhaps.
Oh, now you're talking, Hallie. See you later.
Bye.
Astronomy Daily, the podcast, with your host, Steve Dunkley.
Yeah, thanks, Hallie. Just one sugar, thanks. Yeah.